Muy buenos días.
Buenos días.
It's a pleasure to join you this morning. I wanted to comment on the document itself, what it means, and what it means to those of us in particular who are in the nonprofit world and work on these issues on a daily basis. This is a significant document. It's very important. It's an ambitious document. To get all of these organizations together to do a document by committee of 60 is not easy. And clearly, both Sarita and Deborah and all the staff at Excelencia have to be commended for the work that they did. This document, while it is a document by committee, really does reflect, in my view, the leadership that Excelencia is providing in this very important initiative. This is a necessary document, and I think in some respects it's a historical document because it tells us where we're at. But I think more than that, it tells us where we are going. Is it simply a roadmap? It certainly is a map. It certainly describes best practices, but I'd say it's more than a roadmap. In some respects, it's a roadmap with a GPS. It tells you, if you look at it carefully, if you read it carefully, you will see, from your organization's perspective, when you need to turn to the left and when you need to turn to the right and when you need to go straight and for how long you need to go. In some respects, it tells us what the best practices are, and I think the author should be commended. But I would say that what is in the document, and we need to go beyond this document, this document indicates that research has taken place, that there have been a lot of studies. I think we need to go beyond that. We're at a point where the research has served us well, but we know what works. Those of us that work in higher education and work getting Latinos through the pipeline, we know what works. We know that good schools work. We know that motivating students to go to college is hugely important, especially for Latinos. We know that financial support is indispensable, but we also know that financial support, while necessary, is not sufficient. We know that we need to create a social support structure to support students as they get into college. We know what works to retain them. We know what works to graduate them. So I would argue that this document encapsulates what we know and what works. But that, I think, is not the main value of this document. We're at a point, I believe, where the issues that we need to deal with are not so much around pedagogy or research. They're really around management. It really is what Deborah said. She said, if you listen carefully, she said, this is an action document. And I would argue that she's absolutely right. This is an action document. And what it tells us is that as organizations, if we are truly to make a dent in this issue, which I view as again, Representative Gonzalez said, he said, this is not a Latino issue. This is not exclusively a Hispanic issue. This is a national workforce development issue. And if we are to make a dent in the problematic that we face, which again is laid out very clearly in the document, by the year 2050, Latinos will comprise nearly a third of this labor force and population. Yet we have the lowest high school graduation rates, lowest college going rates, and lowest educational attainment rates among the population. Something's got to give. And I think as organizations, it is our responsibility that we make sure that we ensure that that gap be closed. And this is where I think the real value of the document is, which is in a call to action for those organizations, and not just the 60 organizations that have signed on to this document. Because the reality is, there are many of us, we are all too small, we all do good work, but the size of the problem, the magnitude of the problem is such that we all have to recommit ourselves and rededicate our efforts to do more. So how do we do more? How do we grow as organizations? How do we grow with quality? And that's, I think, the challenge. And I would say that's a management issue at this point. How as organizations do we grow to meet this challenge? Well, we can grow organically, which is what we're doing now. We're basically taking little steps here, and we're all out raising money, and we're all trying to do one thing or another, and that's what you do as a nonprofit, and that's what you do in higher education. You try to make a difference. I would say that's good, but it's not sufficient. We could grow through, and Secretary Riley had said it, partnerships. And I think that's a huge opportunity. As organizations, we need to start talking to each other. We need to start learning how the organizations can work together. We need to understand what we do so that we can figure out what are the complementarities across our organizations to be more effective. Again, I go back to the point that no one organization is going to solve this issue. So partnerships is another way to grow, and I think gives us a great opportunity. How we structure those partnerships. I think there are a lot of, one advantage of coming to an organization anew is you don't bring a lot of baggage. And I think that's important. We need to put some of the issues that have kept us divided aside and really begin talking to each other. Mergers and acquisitions is a third way to grow. And in some cases, I think organizations need to get closer together in more formal ways to be able to deal with this challenge. So, the message that I would leave is that this is an important document, but we need to go beyond what it recommends. Again, it sets out good practice, and that's important for us to know. Now, as Deborah and Sarita have all championed, we need to move that practice into action. The problems are too big for us simply to continue doing what we've been doing up to now. Thank you so much.